What's up, everybody? It's Kevin here from Happy Beard Games, and today we're doing a pickups type video. We're focusing on this video subject as what's going through my mind as I go through a retro video game store. What kind of games am I looking for? Am I looking for the best prices, the best deals, or is it a specific type of game that I'm looking for? What is going through my mind as I'm shopping for retro games? We'll find all that out today on Hybrid Games, and we'll go through the games that I actually did buy, which was 5 different games for the Nintendo NES, as well as a little bit of gameplay from each of them. Maybe a couple minutes just to check out what that game is and what it's all about. Because that's an important part of picking games up, is actually playing them and finding out what that game is and what it's all about. So let's jump in today with Hybrid Games as pickups for the Nintendo NES. Alright, let's go.
Happy Beard Games, your source for classic gaming goodness.
Whoa! Now you're playing with power.
So now today's pickups videos were all at the store, Super Smash Games in Olympia, Washington. It's a really cool store. It's a local owned and operated retro video game store. They have games from all the way from the Nintendo NES and the Atari 2600 and the Sega Master System, and all the way up to, I believe they do PS4. They might even have some PS5 games. So they go all the way, a big range of games. They have a lot of variety. They have Japanese import games. I get a lot of my Famicom games there. Didn't get any Famicom games there today. They have a lot of games out on the shelves that are just, you can browse through them. Those ones are usually under $20, usually $10 to $5. And then the ones that are behind the glass counters or the glass cases are the more expensive, pricier ones for like collectors that really want them to be in the box, or for some rare game collectors. Now for me, when I go to a game store, I have to consider games that I already have. And that gets harder and harder the longer you keep going to game stores, because it's like, okay, I don't want to buy a duplicate, especially if it's going to cost me a lot. Otherwise, I could trade it or I could sell it, and I don't really want to do that right now. Maybe when game conventions come back in my area, then I can buy some duplicates and it'll be okay. But for the most part, I don't want to buy the same game twice, especially when it costs a bit more. So it's kind of cool on the NES. For me, the systems like the NES and the Super Nintendo, more specifically, are games that I had when I was a little lad, specifically Super Nintendo, actually. I have Super Nintendo games from when I was a kid, and then NES games I have from more when I was in high school. I didn't get the NES till a little bit later. So with these games, that are games that I've had long before retro gaming became super popular and expensive. So it's cool to have, in my case, that's probably the best way to start collecting, is if you started way back in the day. Because that way you've got the games already. You know, maybe your parents bought them for you if you're a kid, or maybe they've gone up in value now. You never know. It might be harder to buy games now than it was back in the day. Even though games did cost $50 to $60 usually for like Super Nintendo and stuff when they were new. But like some of these games, like I already have, like Castlevania 1 through 3. I've got all the Super Mario games on the Nintendo NES. I've got the 2 Zelda games. I've got Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. I've got a lot of cool games on the Nintendo NES that are big, popular titles. And then, so that makes it hard to go buy pickups. It also makes it hard for pickups videos, because like people are more interested in, oh, you got a cool game, you got an expensive or rare game. And I'm like, well, I already have a lot of the popular games that people know and love from the Nintendo NES. So you're not going to see any like big mind-blowing games in this video, but we're going to talk about some of the specific things that go through my mind when I'm buying it. And one of those things is don't buy games that you already have unless you're going to trade or sell it, but I don't want to buy duplicates, especially of big games like Punch-Out or, stuff like that. There is a few that I'm missing that are pretty big, like Contra. I don't have Contra, but I have Super C and stuff like that. There's a few games that I'm missing that I can't think of right now, but yeah. So when I first started collecting from the Nintendo NES, I had a lot of the classics already pretty early on. Like I had the Castlevania trilogy early on. I had the Zelda games early on. I had all the Mario games early on. I didn't get Metroid till a little bit later, but I had a lot of the big ones. And then, so what I was most interested about the NES when it came out, or when I got it rather, at the end of high school, um, was playing arcade games, arcade classics at home. So I got this controller, the Advantage right here, just to show. I like playing my arcade games with the retro experience of the NES, so it's more legit feeling, takes you back to the past. And yeah, the Advantage is a good way to go. There's better joysticks for the NES now, but the Advantage is still a pretty good controller. So playing games like Rampage or Gauntlet 2, I guess, Pac-Man, Tetris are all great with that Advantage controller and just being great arcade ports for the Nintendo NES. So that was something I was looking for early on, and also getting the classic Nintendo-made titles. Got a lot of the black box games for good deals way back when. If I could have shown those deals on YouTube right after I picked them up, people would have been losing their minds, because like I got some of these black box games for like $5 each, complete in box and stuff like that. It's just deals that you can't get anymore. And when I was hooking up my Nintendo NES, because we're using the actual Nintendo NES on this video, we're not using the Retron, because people complain when I use the Retron on my Duck Hunt video. So we're using the actual Nintendo NES. I found the power brick to plug in the AC adapter, and it has a sticker on it from Goodwill that says $1.99. It's like back when you could get cool Nintendo stuff, like the older Nintendo stuff at Goodwill for like $2 each. Like I got Ocarina of Time for $2, stuff like that. And I got some classic Nintendo games. You can't really find, at least in my area, Oregon and Washington, I can't find NES games. Sometimes Super Nintendo, sometimes even GameCube games, but not ever NES games, really. Not anymore. Not in the last 5 to 8 years have I seen an NES game at a Goodwill. At least that's in my area. But a retro game store is a little bit different. You have more variety, because that's what the store is about. So that brings us to, we don't want to rebuy the classics that we already have. We don't. And then what else have I been collecting since then? What games am I looking out for? How do you know what to find and what to look for when there's like hundreds of different NES titles and you're kind of not sure what these games could be? And when I get to the pickups, I'll explain that a little more. So when I first started collecting, I got the classics, and then I got the arcadey titles, like the black box NES Nintendo games, and I also got like, Gauntlet and Pac-Man and all that Tetris stuff. The next thing that I wanted to get, because of what started me and YouTube and the things I was interested on at that time, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, was the Angry Video Game Nerd. Got his autograph on the Power Glove, which is a great Nintendo accessory, for a collectible at least. So the Angry Video Game Nerd show really got me into YouTube. The reason that my channel is named Happy Beard Games is because it's a pun or a play on the word of angry, happy, and then beard, because instead of nerd, it's beard, and then games, because it's like the game nerd, Okay, so that's basically where the title of the show came from. But yeah, so when I did that, I wanted to get a lot of those games that were reviewed on the Angry Video Game Nerd, because I want to try them out for myself, see if they're actually that bad, like the LJN games or other movie-based titles. Not only that, but I wanted to play them because I love those movies that they're based on. I really think that the 80s were the best time for movies. The best generation of movies came out of the 1980s. And that's even before I was born, so I was a fetus in the late 80s, but, I still think that they're the best movies, because I watched them when I was a kid. Because, of course, not all the 90s movies were out back then. So yeah, I watched a lot of 80s movies when growing up as a kid, even though I wasn't there to see it in theaters. So I picked up a lot of the Nintendo NES games that James Rolfe reviewed on Angry Video Game Nerd. Not all of them. There's a few that I'm missing, so if I ever want to go back and get some more, those are some games that I can look forward to. So that brings us to another subject. If you see a game on YouTube, see someone playing it, a lot of the time it's the more popular games like Batman NES or, like Mario or like something like a Contra. The more popular games, you see them more frequently, of course. But if you go to something like Angry Video Game Nerd, where he plays like movie games by LJN, or sometimes you find some really obscure games like Action 52's collections and stuff like that. You find some weird ones on the NES. Like I have a few weird ones, like the Wisdom Tree games that I've done before, and there's some other ones that are just like unlicensed that I have. older games. And those are games that I wanted to pick up around that time when I started my YouTube channel. So there's different phases of my life where I wanted to get NES games. There was, first getting an NES in high school, I wanted to get the classics. And then when I moved out, I wanted to get the arcade games. And then when I started my YouTube channel, I wanted to get the games AVGN covered. And now it's like, what is there left to get? I have over 100 Nintendo NES games. I probably have 150 now, considering the pickups today. And I have a lot of Famicom as well, which is a different subject. So there's a lot of Famicom exclusive games as well. And we know all about that on Famicom Fridays, right? So when I'm looking at a game store, I try to find games that I haven't heard of and look interesting. So it's kind of weird going off the cover art. Sometimes I'll pick about half the games, because if I have a $30 limit, I can get like a few different $5 games. So I look at the cover. Does the cover look interesting? Does the title sound interesting? A few of these games that I got today are based on that, but I don't want to get the whole pickups just based on the cover alone, because you don't judge a book by a cover. You don't judge an NES game by its cover either. As we all know, they don't look like their cover art most of the time. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they actually have game art on the covers. Like Slalom, I believe, has that. Not sure what else. There's some Famicom games that do that too. Yeah, so I try to base them off the cover. What does the game look like? What does it sound like it's going to be about? Another thing is, if you know what series it's based upon, like, is there a Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Is there a Gremlins? Is there a Batman connection to it? Is that part of a series? But sometimes those movie-based games can be more popular and more pricey. So some of these are actually based on series that I have today. Another thing you want to look for is sports games. I kind of avoid the sports games. I don't really like too many sports games. I have some golf games. There was one game that I passed on pickup that I kind of want to get. It was only $3. Only $3. It was called Fighting Golf. Like golf where you beat each other with a club at the end? I don't know. See, that's what you don't know. The unknown regions of the uncharted territory of the Nintendo NES library, at least for me. Now you might think, Kevin, how do you not know everything about the NES and stuff like that? You had an NES for so long. Well, there's a bunch of games, and some of them have weird titles and weird subjects, and they're hard to tell what they are based on the cover art. And if you don't know them from the arcades, you don't know them from other YouTubers, and you don't know them as a classic Nintendo game, you don't know what you're gonna get. So it's like a box of chocolates, like Forrest Gump. Anyways, so those are things that you have to consider. You have to consider, is it a classic? Is it an expensive rare game you might know about from YouTubers? Is it based on a movie? That's another thing you got to figure out. And then, is it a sports game? Because if you like sports games, that's cool. But a lot of the sports games are very similar to each other. There's a lot of golfing games on the. There's a lot of golfing games. There was like 3 different golf games that I didn't have there. And I have a couple. I have NES Open. I have Golf. And I actually have 2 copies of Golf, Famicom and NES. And then I have, I think I have another one too. And there's like fishing games, like a lot of basketball games, or some baseball games, bases loaded. I don't have those, so I avoided those for now. But I can always get them way later on down the road, because they're not too expensive, and I don't think their price is going to go up on some of those sports games that are more generic for the Nintendo NES, more similar to other sports titles. Some of them are pretty good, like Tecmo Bowl, but I try to avoid sports games in the NES. I do like golf, though. The Nintendo Golf. Anyways, so avoid the sports games for now, for me. This is all my opinions and stuff, too, of course. And then what is left after that? Well, I'm going to show you what I picked up. I know I have the long intro, but I'm going to show you what I picked up, and then we're going to do a little bit of gameplay towards the end of the video. But it'll make more sense when I actually show you what I got. So one of the subjects that I really like, one of the types of games that I love on the Nintendo NES actually, is game show games or board game games. And that might surprise you, because I don't really hear people talk about these games too much, because they're not your action games, they're not your sports games, and they're not based upon movies, they're based upon game shows. So I'm trying to remember what they are. I have a game called, my games aren't sorted alphabetically currently, but there's a game called Anticipation. There's Jeopardy games. And we picked up one game. The first game we picked up today is called Win, Lose, or Draw. And on the box, it tells you what it is about. Draw your own pictures like the hit TV game show, which I'm assuming was a game show in the 80s, or let the program draw them for you. Over 500 picture puzzles. And it kind of looks like a Pictionary. There is a Pictionary for the Nintendo NES as well. So this is some sort of similar to a Pictionary type game. And I love these game show games. I don't know if I'm going to love this one, but I loved Anticipation, and I loved... I can't think of the name at the moment. It might have just been Anticipation. I've done it on my channel before. It's just fun to play these game show party games on the Nintendo NES. So this is the first one we picked up. This was $4 at Super Smash Games today. Win, lose, or draw. And these are not big NES games. They're just games that are, you know, once you've narrowed it down past the popular games, past the movie games, and past the arcade games, this is what's left. These are games that are on the NES that might be worth checking out, might not be worth checking out, but you don't know until you really pick it up. So that was the first one. The next one was actually, John Riggs, the YouTuber. He went to Super Smash Games and did a video on it 11 months ago, and I watched that video. I commented on it. It was cool. I haven't met John in person, but I've seen him at conventions. I don't know why. I just didn't talk to him for some reason. But I'll change that in the future. He talked about when he went there, he looked through all the games and mentioned some of his favorites. And one of them was Wrath of the Black Manta, not Manta. It's not Mantra, it's Manta. Wrath of the Black Manta, which I don't know. It could be based on like a movie or a show. I'm not sure. I don't think so. It's by Taito. And this is the exact copy that he was talking about. This is the one that he showed in his video. So I got that exact copy. I could tell because there's distortion on the cart. I might have to clean that off too before we start the video part. But yeah, it looks cool, and he said it was a good game. And it's $5, so it could be a hidden gem. I don't know. That's one of the things where if you see another YouTuber talk about a game that's more obscure that you don't know about, but they say it's good or they say it's one of their favorites, you got to try it out and you got to pick it up for yourself, especially if you love the Nintendo NES. So that's Wrath of the Black Manta. We'll check that in a little bit. Here's a game that I mentioned before. Like, you look at the cover art. What does it look like? What does it make you feel in the artwork? And does that represent the game? We don't know until we pick it up and play it. And that is Lunar Pool. Whoa, that cover art is going on my cover art for this video because this is awesome. It's like they've got spacesuits, like Star Trek. You've got a bionic arm on this man. You've got computer modules in the background and like a space diagram. You've got glowing neon lights. You've got a glowing, strangely shaped pool billiards table. And like, it just looks awesome. Neon lights. Looks very synthwave. Looks awesome. I don't know what this is. Lunar Pool. So, I mean, it's going to be a pool game. I'm assuming it's going to be a little more extreme than your standard pool game. That's pretty cool. And that kind of goes with the board games and stuff. Pool is kind of a weird area where it feels like a board game, but also feels like a sport. And I'm pretty sure it's just a sport, but it does have that board game feel to it, especially when you're just playing it with your friends. So that could be kind of cool. The next game is something based upon a movie or TV series. This one, more specifically, is based on a manga from Japan, which surprised me that this game even got released on the Nintendo NES. You would think it would be stuck on the Famicom, because I don't know if this anime ever got translated back in the day for an anime or manga adaptation in North America, in English. And that is Top Secret Episode, aka Golgo 13. So Golgo 13, which is kind of hard to pronounce now that I'm saying it out loud, is... like, it's like you're a spy, like a James Bond type thing or a military type thing. It looked pretty cool. This one I actually looked up in the store, which makes me feel a little uncomfortable. I feel like maybe the shopkeeper, I don't know if they care or not, but I don't know if the shopkeepers are like, oh, maybe he's trying to find a better price somewhere else or trying to resell or something. No, I'm just trying to find out what the gameplay genre is sometimes. Sometimes I want to know right away before I buy the game. But I was like, okay, Golgo 13, that sounds familiar. The character looks familiar art style. I think this is based on a manga, so I searched it on Google real quick. This is by Vic Tokai and Golgo 13, Top Secret Episode. I'm actually pretty excited for this one. This was $5. Now we've got the most expensive game on here, which is kind of weird. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to play this game. So that game goes with the Power Glove, and that is Power Glove Gaming Series Super Glove Ball for the Nintendo NES, and that is pretty cool looking cover art. I might throw that on my cover art too, or somewhere on this video. Of course, it's by Mattel. You know, I think they made the Power Glove, didn't they? I think they made it with Nintendo, so Mattel. Yeah, reaches a new dimension in video game play. I don't know. It shows a little bit like a Power Glove, like controlling it and such. Power Glove and joystick compatible. So we've got, a joystick. Is that the Nintendo controller? Or is that, just the Advantage, which I don't understand why it would just be the Advantage, which is weird. So I'm pretty sure you can use a controller as well. So we should be able to do that. Now, a little bit of fun fact about my Power Glove. I figured about halfway through the time that I bought this, I bought it for about $70 on eBay a couple years ago, and then I got it autographed by James Rolfe. But before I did that, I was like, actually after I did that, it was after I got it autographed. I was like, this is more of a prop and collectible for me, so I don't mind what I did to it. I took out the wiring. I actually opened it. I didn't just pull it out or cut it off. I took out this, unscrewed it, and the parts where it was soldered in are still intact. I have on the wiring. So I have all the wiring. I could probably solder and it should work again, right? But I have the wiring and stuff like that. I never had the sensors for the TV, so I never been able to use it right. And I didn't have a CRT back in the day. I do now, but I mean, when I got this, I didn't have a CRT. I do now. So yeah, that's why there's no wires. It's just loose, but it is an actual Power Glove, and I just took out the wiring. Just a little fun fact. So these are the games: Super Glove Ball, Golgo 13, Lunar Pool, Black Manta, and Win, Lose, or Draw. And all these came to about $29. That's including tax, $25 without tax. So with those games, it kind of brings you into my perspective when I go to a game store. You have to look for games that you don't have. You don't want to buy the games twice, which so far I haven't done, except I have some doubles from Video Games Monthly. I think I have a couple copies of Sorcerer? No. Immortal. No, I'm not Immortal. It's Exodus. No, wait, not Exodus. There's a lot of weird games. It's a game where you're like a sorcerer and you're walking around doing puzzles in a dungeon. Well, I have 2 copies of that. I can't think of the name at the moment. I'll put it on screen. And I have a couple copies of some other games. I think I have 2 copies of Mario 3 and stuff like that. Maybe Mario 2 as well. And I have 2 copies of the original Mario. Those are easy to find, kind of. But yeah. So you don't want to buy duplicates. You don't want to buy... Well, then I guess the next step would be arcade games or Nintendo Black Box if you want to go that far. If you want to go even further, games that YouTubers recommend, and then games that I want to avoid. You might not want to avoid if you like them, but sports games for the NES, because there's a lot that are very, very similar to each other. And that also makes it hard because you don't want to buy the same one again. But with today, I did a mix of games that I judged by the cover, like Lunar Pool, games that I knew were based on movies or anime, like Golgo 13, and games that are, well, I didn't really mention this, but games that are recommended by YouTubers, and I didn't really mention this, and then games that might make use of an accessory or controller that you specifically have for the NES that you would like to use. Now, the cool thing about that subject is actually right now at Super Smash Games, they have a power pad. The power pad was, I think, was $30. And there was a few games there that required and only used the power pad to play. The power pad is like, it's kind of like a DDR mat with a bunch of buttons. You step on it. They had a few games for that, and I was kind of tempted to pick that up. Maybe in the future. We'll see. Because I like light gun games, and then that's kind of the next step is the power pad, right? Track and field type stuff. Anyways, that kind of wraps up our video. We're going to check out a couple of these games, or all these games, real briefly in this little gameplay clip. So it'll be like 2 to 3 minutes each game, just to see what they're about. Maybe I'll be wrong with my predictions of what these games are about. and maybe I'll be right. Maybe it'll be something that I actually enjoy. So let's jump in with the gameplay on this pickups video.